all of those labels that someone put on me, over the years I've realized that they're not mine. I didn't label myself as them. Somebody else did, and then because they're in a position of authority, I just agreed. And that's why most men are stuck. Welcome to the third episode of the Warrior's Path podcast. In this podcast, I'm going to talk about creating a new version of yourself, a new identity for you to live by. So if you want to become someone who's confident, who's unshakable in your core beliefs and your values, who can walk into a room and own that room and be comfortable in themselves, then the mistake a lot of people make is they try to improve upon their identity now, where they are now. But what you really need to do is eliminate the identity you have for yourself now and then build yourself a new one. So I have a few talking points here that I'm going to get into. And the first thing is why men seem to feel stuck. And it's because of the patterns that they live in. Like, we feel stuck because we identify as something. I identify as a martial artist. So then everything I do in my day-to-day life comes from that identity. So is this something a martial artist would do? Would I, like, if I'm struggling with something, what's my plan? Is my plan to let it beat me and go in a different direction, avoidance behavior? Or am I going to put on my martial art head, find a solution, find a way around it? So I've studied a lot of Wing Chun, and in Wing Chun there's different wee games that you play. Some practitioners won't like me calling them games, but I like to treat them like a game because that's what they are to me. And you're doing wee patterns, and then we learn this strict pattern. But the idea isn't to keep the pattern in that box and just do the pattern. You do the patterns so that you can learn techniques, same as what we're going through in this podcast. You're learning different techniques, but then you want to take those techniques into a free flow. So we might do all the patterns, whatever the pattern happens to be, and then we go into a free flow where you can incorporate any of the patterns. You're doing different traps, so I would be incorporating things from wrestling, from the Shaolin martial arts that I've done, everything into that understanding of the pattern. So I'm learning the pattern so that I can unlearn the pattern, I suppose. So what happens with most people is they get told that they are a certain way as they're growing up. Like, you're the class clown. I was told that. I was actually told once by an Irish teacher that I was the second most useless person in the class, and for anybody to even ask me a question about what was going on was ridiculous, which it's just a terrible way to teach anybody. I was told by an art teacher that my witch was the worst witch they'd ever seen in their life, which initially I took as a good thing. I thought, oh, I've made the worst witch. There was a TV show, The Worst Witch, at the same time, but I made the worst one, so that must mean it looks scary and terrible like a witch. But he actually meant my skill level was the worst he'd ever seen. So in second year I got put out art and never ever got to go back into art. So all of those labels that someone put on me, over the years I've realized that they're not mine. I didn't label myself as them. Somebody else did, and then because they're in a position of authority, I just agreed. And that's why most men are stuck. Most men are stuck because they've been labeled a nice guy who, like, for an easy example, like the nice guy that always gets friend zoned. Like, I've had friends come to me and they ask, like, why do I always get friend zoned? I'm like, because you act like a friend. This sounds terrible, but you like worm your way in as the friend, hoping that will help it develop into something sexual, but it never does, because you've set the parameters and you've got yourself labeled by that person. Whereas the better approach would be to be more upfront. Like, I am a friendly person, but I actually have intentions beyond friendship with you, and then asking and communicating for a different episode. But just as an example, you're always friend zoned, probably because of how you act and how you respond to things. So we get trapped in our patterns. The problem with patterns is then they become automatic. I suppose the problem with them, if they're negative, is they become automatic, but the problem with good habits, like being a martial artist, is they become automatic as well. So when I'm at Asda, the grocery store, if you're American, if I'm in Asda, I'm standing in the queue in my stance. I never go to Asda anymore. I do click and collect, far handier. Just as a segue, I do click and collect because it's handier, and it takes me two-thirds of the time longer in the shop than it does at click and collect. So my time's more valuable than me wandering around shopping and looking at things. I eat the same stuff every single day, pretty much at the same time. So a wee segue for you. But as a martial artist, I looked at that and I thought, well, here's a way I can bring time back. So we sit in our labels, and when we become that person, when they become automatic, if it's a negative habit, then that's a bad thing. If it's a positive habit, obviously that's a good thing. So the goal is to recognize. So you'll notice that this is going to come up a lot. You can't change anything if you don't know what you need to change, if you don't know where you are and where you need to be. So when you're setting a goal, as an example, you need three things. You need to know where you are right now in relation to the goal, where the goal is, and then the path for you to get there. If you don't know any one of those three things, then you're never going to achieve the goal. So if you're not aware of your patterns, you're never going to be able to change these patterns. So we become familiar with our pattern, and then we end up just playing that role. And then, like I said, it becomes automatic. So if you aren't aware of it, then you can't change it. The second point that I wanted to make is, when you're changing it, you want to take the burn the ships mentality. So this is an old Viking mentality. The Vikings used to land somewhere for some sort of war that they were going to. And I think this, I like the analogy, but I think the plan is actually terrible. They burned all their ships so that they had no retreat. I think you could have turned the ships into huts and weapons and things, but maybe they did do that, and it's just the analogy's better. But they burned the ships, so there's no way back. If you are someone who wants to change a pattern, and the things that you do in your day-to-day life, the people that you hang around with, the content you consume, all of that stuff helps draw you back to the place you don't want to be. You want to burn that. You want to get rid of it. Cut the people out of your life. I know it sounds harsh, but they're not helping you. They're not for your higher good. They're not helping you on your warrior's path. Cut them out. Or if you can't cut them out because they're family, then pull the time back. So an example that I would have used with a lot of clients was, if you know you have to go and meet someone, sometimes you have to go meet your in-laws or your parents or something, and they're toxic to you, I would meditate beforehand to get myself in a good space. Then I would go and spend, if I usually spent an hour, I would now spend 20 minutes. And then when I come home, I would meditate. So the same length of time is being used, an hour and a half all in on this journey to meet these toxic people that you've no choice with. If you have a choice, just get rid of them. But if you haven't, you're taking time before to mentally prepare, get yourself in the zone. I would put on a protective suit in my head. Then I would go and spend way less time than I normally would. And then when I get home, where I still have that time that I would have still been with them, I use that to ground myself and recalibrate, and then go on with the rest of my day. So maybe there's some people you can't get rid of, but you can limit their effect on you and control the amount of time you spend actually with them. So whenever you're doing this, you want to think about things that you do that are autopilot, and then change them. So I've wrote a few things here. If you're someone who avoids confrontation, so you're the nice guy, it's all right being a nice guy when it's a choice. If you are, this has popped up into my head every single time. I actually got grief for it on the internet the other day. But the analogy of the warrior in the garden, rather than a gardener in a war. I've used this in 3 episodes now, but that analogy, whenever you actually look into that, the warrior is someone who understands war, but understands the holistic approach to life then. So they are making the choice. They can go to war, or they can talk people out of it, and they can create the garden, I suppose, or they can turn the garden into war, if that's the way you want to look at it, which is the way the internet looked at it the other day. So when you're the nice guy because you don't know anything else, then it's not a choice. So to me, it's not really you're a nice guy. You're just in a default setting, and that's what it is. I can be nice, and I can be rude. I can be violent, and I can be non-violent. I have these choices because of the way I've lived my life. So if you are someone that avoids confrontation, then you should face discomfort head on. And the easiest way to start that is go and do a cold shower, go for a walk somewhere you wouldn't normally walk on. I'm not saying go and start people, like that's not it at all. You start small. It means then if you're in a meeting at work and someone's telling you did something wrong, whenever you know you didn't do it, you can actually stand up and defend yourself instead of letting them walk over you. If you're friend zoned, you can then start to become someone that isn't taken advantage of. You can still be friends with people, but just not someone that gets taken advantage of. You start to create choices for yourself by your new ability to step into discomfort. So discomfort for you might be completely comfortable for somebody else. So this is a complete personal journey, as the warrior path is for everyone. Another example would be if you seek validation. So if we're on social media, like this podcast is about helping people. So obviously the more feedback I get, the better I can make it, but I'm not validated by it. I know, because I've done all of this, I've lived this, I know that if you implement the tools and techniques I'm giving you, that they actually work. So if you seek validation outside, start to seek validation internally. So do things like meditate, go for walks, eat a bit healthier, exercise daily, even if it's only 2 minutes. Just get into a habit and routine of doing things that elevate your life. Then no one can pull you down, because you know they don't really know you. You are with you 24/7, so you know you better than anyone else can. So when you know yourself, you can start to trust yourself. You can start to be comfortable with yourself and validate your own lifestyle. You don't need other people's opinions for that. So it's back to the same thing of having self-awareness, self-control. If your validation comes externally, then they have the power to make you happy, sad, cry, angry, whatever. If it comes internally, then these people have no power over you whatsoever. And then another one is just if you wait for motivation. The amount of times I'm told I'm going to do it on Monday, or I'm going to wait till next month, or I'm going to wait till I finish X, Y, and Z before I start looking after my health. You're never going to find motivation. You create motivation. Motivation comes from doing and feeling the results. So if I stretch every day and I got no benefit, I'd have no motivation for that. I'd probably end up not doing it anymore, unless the goal was just to stretch every day. But the goal isn't. The goal is to be more flexible. So if I stretch every day and I feel the benefits, I start to get more motivated by the benefits, the results, and then I continue to do it. If I stretch every day and my goal is to be more flexible, and after about 2 weeks I have no benefits, rather than giving up or trying to find motivation, I change what I'm doing. I still stretch every day because I'm trying to get to the goal of more flexible, but I change the flexibility training that I'm doing, and maybe I'll do some strength flexibility, weighted flexibility, maybe I'll do dynamic or static or flow drills, but I change the thing that I'm doing, but the goal is still the same. I'm still aiming towards the thing, which is become more flexible. Well, my goal isn't just to become more flexible. That's too wide a goal. How do you measure that? Like, I have certain things I want to hit along my journey of becoming more flexible. So the reason I'm saying that is, if you just think about motivation, we're back to external. You're letting other things dictate your life. So what you want to do is motivate yourself by having the end goal, the end target, and then moving towards that, and just making an agreement with yourself. Like, today I'm going to start doing 2 minutes of exercise every single day for the next 30 days just to see how I feel, and then just commit and do it. One of the things that I think is really important is so if we bring it back to the start of the episode, where we're talking about not trying to improve your identity, but creating a new identity and building from there, is the ritual of death and rebirth. You'll have heard of this loads of times. It's basically you write a letter to yourself. So I just wrote it down here. You write a letter with all of your fears, your weaknesses, your excuses for not achieving the life that you want to achieve, all the things that you do now that hold you back, and then you write all that down and then burn it. So don't just write it and then throw it away and burn it. Like, focus on it, and when you feel ready to burn it, so it might feel a bit woo-woo to you, but when you feel ready, then you burn it. burn that. And then the next one is you are going to write out your new identity, and that's how you're going to move forward living like that. And just to make it easier, I'll put these in the notes as well, but you just ask yourself, like, who is the man I am becoming? How does he think? How does he walk into a room? How does he respond to challenges? And then every day, at least once a day, you just reinforce that. So answer them honestly and truthfully. You never have to show this letter to anyone. In my book, I called it a boasting letter. Same sort of idea. The boasting letter was about all the things that you've achieved, so you can look at that with no ego and be like, I actually did all these things, so if I can do them, I can do anything else. So this is another version of that. You're clearing out the old identity, creating a new one in your mind, and as we know from, like, if you look at any of Dr. Joe Dispenza's stuff, what you can rewire your brain basically is the most surface level version of that I could say, because I don't want to get into it in this episode. But you rewire that new identity. So every time you've had like all warriors and tribes, and even in martial arts, you get belts, you get sashes, you get awarded. You're doing something tangible for an to connect to an untangible thing. So you burn the old identity and then create the new identity, and then you just move on living with that. So that's what I want to leave you with today. Do those two things. Do the ritual of death and rebirth. So get rid of the old, in with the new. And then ask yourself all these questions and write that letter. This is only the start of your warrior's path. Remember, it's not about self-improvement or self-help, self-development. It's about self-transformation. So you're becoming who you always were meant to be. So thanks for tuning in, and I hope to see you on the next episode.